Hi, Em.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you today because I have so many questions about building amazing products, complex products. How did you end up in this sector, actually?
So I studied astrophysics at university.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to know anything about dark matter, let me know.
I would love to know. Let's do the interview about that. That's more fun.
And then started working for a tech consultancy after that. And so we were looking at biometrics and how they're used across the UK, specifically in the police forces, which was really interesting. We were going into like scene of crime, looking at how they capture fingerprints, or in custody suites, looking at facial capture and how they can then share that across both internationally but within the UK as well, which is super interesting. And then I started doing more work in the biometric and digital identity space. Did a short stint in Nairobi, which I mentioned, which is super interesting. And we were looking at creating an app for people in Nairobi, which is kind of similar to TaskRabbit, but it was looking at kind of linking people together through the app. And then we integrated with M-Pesa, which is the mobile payments network in Kenya and wider in East Africa as well, which is really interesting. And then moved back to the UK and then came and started working again more towards tech and government and digital identity and looking at the EU settlement scheme app, which is kind of similar to when you have onboarding in some of the challenger banks. So like with Monzo or Starling, when you have to, take a selfie and scan your document to prove who you are and create a digital identity. It's very similar tech to that. And so we developed that, and that then got used for the Ukraine and Afghanistan scheme, which is really interesting to help enable people come to the UK faster. And then kind of pulled all of that together and ended up working in Yoti, which is where I am now. Again, kind of looking at digital identity and really pushing privacy preserving and the safety elements of tech and tech for good.
Wow, that's an amazing journey.
Thanks. It's a bit all over the place, but
To simplify maybe the terms, when you say biometric technology, what kind of software technology is that? Is it just computer vision? How do you build a model that is high accuracy?
Yeah, so it's super complex. So biometrics can be facial images, it could be DNA, it could be iris, it could be fingerprints. So there's a number of different modes of biometrics that you could look at. Face is one of the big ones because it's easier for people to capture and it's very, easy to use, and the tech there is really good in that space. The way that most software is built is that it's essentially the algorithms, but you would train a model which could be based on AI, but you're training a model based on data, essentially, so machine learning, and feeding data of different faces into that algorithm to be able to teach it to be able to recognize whether it's the same person, if you're doing a one-to-one comparison, say, of two faces, or being able to potentially assess the age of someone based on the image of their face and how they capture that. But it's very complex. It's, dependent on the lighting, and, making sure that your algorithms aren't biased is a huge issue and something that we at Yoti are really passionate about. But yeah, it's massively developing space, and it's really interesting because the tech in this area is just constantly evolving, like it's rapid.
Yeah.
So
I think it was the most common AI models that everyone now is using or used to using. Also, although they have been using biometric technology to unlock their phones, right? Face ID. It's
exactly.
quite common. We all use it on a daily basis. But now everyone is talking about generative AI.
Yes.
What do you think about that? Are you using ChatGPT?
Yeah, I use it in just with work and things. Or it's interesting sometimes if you want to understand, I guess, even from a marketing perspective, what the view of people or of a particular theme or a topic is in the market, and also just understanding where, if the general consensus of a particular topic is going, or legislation or policy. So it's interesting to kind of use it in that space. But yeah, I use it all the time, even just in my personal life as well.
Yeah. What do you think about the privacy aspect of that, and how, if we're all moving away from Google search and the way we've been tracking people on the web,
Yeah.
and that's majorly shifting because we're all using this conversational AI to get our information. How do you think that's going to impact how we protect our data and our privacy?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think specifically at Yoti, that's something we're really passionate about, and we have the Guardian councils and ethics communities that we really, any tech that we develop, we make sure that we understand the implications of it. Does it align with our ethics policy and our trust policy? And so it's a massive problem, and not all companies are doing that and have a similar scrutiny on that side of things. But I think it's interesting because there's definitely a shift of data moving towards the user and the user owning their own data. So that's really exciting to see, because typically or historically it might have been bigger tech companies who own your data once you've shared that with them. So it's a really interesting shift now, specifically within the digital identity space. There's more focus on the user owning their data and companies not being able to see or access that without the user's consent, which is really positive, I think.
How do you think a user can access or have the right to their data? How would that technologically be possible?
Yeah, so we use PKI, so public key infrastructure, so only the user can access the data that they have within the attributes of their digital identity. So we don't have access to someone's email address, so we can't spam them with emails. So it's things, not that we would want to, but we physically cannot do that. So that's really interesting, the technology in that space and kind of the distributed identity networks that people are starting to create and use more. And kind of there's wallets as well, so digital ID wallets or digital credentials. Again, the user owns their data and that's on their device. And so, again, it's within their remit to share that data, and it's up to them, and they have consent of their data rather than it being owned by some bigger tech company that can share with who they want.
Yeah, how do you communicate that in a product when you're making the product? How do you make sure that it's subtle and you develop that trust? I mean, you're in front of me, you're telling me this, and I believe you, but then when you're looking at
on
the
our
tech,
website. It's really important, and it's definitely something that's really positive. But when we're, within the UI, we can try and encourage that there's a trust element here, and we have the information available if people want to read more about it. But so it's definitely something we try and ensure that our users are aware of, because it's something that's really important to them. And it's also, I guess, comes down to some of our marketing and just who we are as a brand and as a company. Privacy preserving tech and the safety of our users is at the core of what we do.
And do you think founders should consider that at what level during their product development journey? Should they consider that the privacy of their users and try to communicate that as subtly as possible?
I think at the start, I think we're going to start to see more and more companies having to be really open and transparent about that, and that's something that users are looking for when they're choosing who to work with or who to buy from. So I think that's absolutely critical. And there are it makes it challenging but also interesting for us, because there's a lot of things that we could be doing that would be detrimental to, say, the privacy of our users, and we choose not to do that. But then kind of it's working around, if our competitors are doing that, then it makes it a harder problem for us to solve. How can we still be competitive and provide the best services for our users whilst making sure that we are living by our ethics and our trust and our Guardian principles, that the user is first and the safety and the privacy of their data is absolutely key.
Does the government get involved at any point of product development? So they have. So there's different frameworks. So that's one of the things that I look at Yoti is the different frameworks by country. And so there's definitely, so even in the US, there's kind of biometric consent. So if you're capturing biometrics with the users, then you have to capture their consent prior to the capture of the biometrics. And you see that sometimes in supermarkets. If they have the cameras at the self-checkout tills, then everyone's very aware of biometric consent and the capture of that. So governments do get involved in it, and there's several kind of working groups that the UK government in particular have
that are trying to enhance and kind of maintain and stay ahead of technology so that the policy is there to protect and ensure the safety and the privacy of the public.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of actual laws, it doesn't exist, right?
So the safety bill that's coming through, that's interesting because that means that big tech corporations will have to adhere to privacy standards. And there's also like fines that have been in the EU. So some of the big companies, some of the big social media companies have been fined like millions of dollars and pounds because they haven't been making sure what their site is promoting in terms of content isn't available to people maybe potentially underage. And so those companies are being fined because they're not protecting their users in a way that they should be.
I think TikTok was fined recently.
Yeah, it was TikTok. Yeah, they're starting to have more emphasis on companies being responsible in that way, which is really positive to see. And so, yeah, we're really keen to help companies to do that.
Nice. I recently did a video on Sam Altman's coin. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
So the founder of OpenAI has founded another company called WorldCoin, and it's a crypto project that is supposed to give universal basic income to everybody. So now they're going all around the world, scanning eyeballs and collecting that data for crypto. It's a huge ethical dilemma because it's like it has to be done. I mean, if we do want to have universal basic income in the future and maybe give back to the people who lost their jobs because of AI and because of automation, but at the same time,
that's so interesting.
Giving crypto for biometric.
I need to read about this.
Yeah,
Send me the article.
So how long have you been a product manager?
So I started off doing more kind of consulting and business analysis side of things, but a lot of that is more product management anyway. So, but it's been probably about 7 or 8 years now.
Wow,
so it's been a while.
What's your advice for someone who's just starting out?
I think be enthusiastic and proactive. I think that's really important. And I think one of the things, especially within tech, things are constantly changing. So being comfortable with uncomfortable things, if everything's shifting all the time or there's new, just the pace of development is wild. So I think being on top of that and wanting to understand that and know what the market is doing, what customers are doing, how tech is developing. That's really important.
Why you should follow me, because I just tell you about all of the latest things that happen. I don't know if you see, but it was OpenAI's first dev day yesterday, and they announced a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, I did see it. It's been all over.
It's going to kill a lot of startups.
I need to actually look at all the individual things, but it's the pace of development in that space is,
So they announced the GPT store, so you can build your own model and have it as well as a GPT assistant, which you can connect it to your own web app or just leave your app in the GPT store. And they're hoping to have a monetization program in the future, just like Apple.
Yeah.
I think we're at the start of the way everything is changing in the way that we are interacting with the internet, and we're just at the start. What do you recommend for individuals who want to be product managers to do with this kind of tech?
I think have a play with it, like see what it can do. Yes, and also I think it's really important to not just look at all the normal use cases. So if there's people are obviously going to be talking about it in particular ways because it can help with a specific use case, but then it's being like, oh, actually there's this problem that no one's really thinking about because it's not a super sexy problem or it's not going to make loads of money. So I think it's looking at other problem spaces and being like, how does this tech or ChatGPT apply, and how can I use it to solve problems for other industries or other problem spaces? Because that's often where, if it's not a particularly sexy idea, then it's going to probably lack investment or people aren't going to be focused on that area, which is often where some of the big opportunities are.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're just starting out as a product manager in tech, what are some of the main challenges Or let me rephrase that question.
Yeah.
Why should you not become a product manager?
Why should you not become a product manager? I think if you're not happy with the constant change, that is just what you're going to be in, like those situations. So I think that's maybe a reason. It's a good question. I guess you can't make everyone happy. And the role I find as a product manager is that you're speaking with the architects, with the tech team who, have a very specific way of doing things, or they know exactly what they can and can't do, what's feasible. You've also got customers who will be coming to you and saying, oh, I've had this amazing idea, or I saw this thing, can we do it? Then you've also got all the other business stakeholders. So the CEO, he's like, yeah, this is a really cool idea, I want to do it. Or, and then also commercial and finance teams. And so trying to get everyone to come to a solution together can be quite difficult, and you're never going to please everyone. So I think being able to say no to people is sometimes difficult, or being able to have tricky conversations with people can be harder. But I think if you bring the rationale and data and explanation and communicate to them why we haven't been able to solve the problem this way, but here's another option that's actually feasible or is going to be better for the revenue. So I think it's looking at different opinions and being able to feeling comfortable having difficult conversations sometimes.
How do you hone that skills, having difficult conversations?
Practice it. Say no. I think that's one thing that I think I've become a lot better at. I think when I first started work, I'd just be like, yeah, like, oh, someone needs something doing, absolutely. Or if a customer asks for something, then like, yeah, don't worry, we can do it.
It's that getting excited again. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea.
You want to please people, right? Yeah. So, but I think getting used to saying no, and also you can't say yes to everything. It's just going to cause problem later down the line. So I think practicing saying no, biting the bullet, and actually does end up being more positive on the whole at the end of the journey. So I think, just sticking by your guns and being empathetic to people's different opinions and views, but providing data and clear explanation as to why a decision has or hasn't been made, I think is really important.
Do you think product managers should have a technical background?
I think it helps, but I think it's theory and it's experience which you can learn and you can gain. So I did do some coding at university, but it's not like I then became an ace coder. I don't program now. So I think it helps to be able to communicate to the tech teams. So if you're working on a problem and then you can understand why they're saying, no, we can't do this, it's not feasible. You need to be tech literate, but that's something you can learn, I think. So I think communication is a more important skill.
Where does UI come into this and design?
Yeah, so
how much of you, like if I were to work with you today, how much of your time goes into communicating with the dev team versus retraining on the designs versus looking at legislation versus negotiating with the different stakeholders about what to actually go within the products?
Yeah.
How does that day look like?
Yeah. So I'm group product manager, so I sit across all of our products. So,
oh my God.
Which is but then I don't need to know the nitty gritty detail. Like we've got ace product managers who know that a lot better than I do. So I'm more looking at legislation changes or speaking to customers or understanding when they come to us with a problem that might sit across all of our products, then I can help look at what's realistic, what's feasible, what are the gaps between what we want to do and what we can currently do. But if you're a product manager, then actually it depends on the product. So if you're working on an app, then obviously the UI and the design is going to be a lot more important than if you're working on like a back-end product that no one sees, but that's what's doing all the calculation or has all the business logic in. So I think it depends on what the product is as to how much you're doing on the design or how much you're doing more kind of technical side of things. So and that's why you don't need to have done computer science to be able to be a product manager, because you could work on a more design focused product And then you could use your skills in that area rather than having to know the nitty-gritty back-end requirements.
That sounds a lot like what a founder should be doing.
Yeah.
In an early stage founder should be doing.
Yeah.
But would you see them as someone who does like what you're doing, legislation, talking to the customers, figuring out what should go into the products and the value they should be providing through the product they're building, or as like a product manager who's focusing more on the design? And where do you think founders should focus on early stage?
I think the product is really important, and I think you don't know what direction, I guess, the company is going to go in without speaking to your customers and knowing new legislation changes that kind of come in that could just throw your idea into the water and render it useless, or it could be a brand new opportunity space. So I think having that broader knowledge is really important to be able to then understand what direction you want the product and the company to go in. But then I guess there are a lot of other roles or responsibilities of a founder too. So at the point where they don't have capacity to really understand the product and also look at what data they're getting in terms of how the users are using it and be able to really get into that, then that's probably the point when it should be a product manager coming in and starting to support them.
So would your recommendation is to hire a product manager after having users using your product, not before?
I think it depends at what stage, because there's a lot of, you should be having users as soon as you possibly can so that you get that feedback. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be a publicly available app, or it could be a very kind of targeted proof of concept that you're just getting informal feedback from. But I think if you have a product manager that can help support that journey, that's always going to be beneficial.
What data points do you recommend for founders to look at early on?
So what we do in terms of products, we'll look at, firstly, I guess, so like the journey is really important. So understanding.
How do you map out a journey? Actually, I've been trying to do the exercise myself this week, and I was like, do I use Miro or?
Yeah, you should use. Miro is great, or Figma if you're looking most good. That's kind of like a UI tool with the wireframes. We use that a lot. It's really useful. And then once you've actually got a working proof of concept, then you can have business events in it. So when a user hits this point in a page, or when they click through here, you can see what the drop-off is aligning to the user journey. And that's really good because you can say, oh, there's a bottleneck here, or, oh, people are waiting a day before they can do this. That's too long. We want to shorten that. So
write that down. Business events, you said.
Yeah. And there's so many different software. There's a lot of stuff available. And it depends on what your tech stack looks like. But there's a lot, a lot available.
I use Figma for now.
Yeah, Figma's great.
But I was thinking maybe I should use to identify these drop-off points.
Yeah, there's like Google Looker is one.
Okay.
There's a lot.
And you can track all of that through like Mixpanel or Google Analytics, right?
Yeah.
When you have users.
Yeah, and you can you can do different dashboards and that are responsive depending on what you're interested in. Or if it's, you can break it down by different user groups if you've got that data available. So that's interesting.
Go about making your hypothesis to know what to test in the app?
So it might be that it's feedback from customers. So if someone's saying, we're seeing a lot of this and it's not what we'd expect, or we've had someone struggle with this, or even if just generally, if we see something in the market, so potentially if we want to look at what's happening within the fraud space with digital identity, if there's a theme that's coming out from the market or just from analytics, then we can say, is this a problem for us that we're not somehow aware of? And then, so it's a number of different things. It could be customers, it could be just themes online that we're seeing, or it could be, a lot of the time it's just people in, within the company saying, this kind of data looks a bit weird. Like I'm just interested as to why this is happening because it's not what I would expect. So a lot of it is just testing and seeing as well.
At Yoti, your clients are businesses, right? Or
so
customers, so B2B to C.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the main differentiator between a product manager who's dealing with businesses versus someone who's dealing directly with customers?
Yeah, so we do both. So people can use our app at cinema to prove their age, or if you want to prove your age online, you can download the Yoti app. It's great. So yeah, that's really, so we do a lot with users as well, but then also with businesses and their users as well. So I think the users is, if you're doing a B2C, then it's interesting because you can do kind of user specific focus groups, or go and speak to the public, or do testing with users on board. If you're doing a B2B, it's, I guess, the conversations that you're having with the customers and with a smaller range of people from that business sometimes. So I think there's different techniques to how you would do those things, but they're equally interesting. And yeah, it definitely makes it more dynamic to be able to have both on the platform, because then there's just a whole host of extra things to think about. And it's also challenging, I think, when you don't just have one set. You're not just targeting big businesses. We also want members of the public to use our app. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah, because I guess the difference is in the value they see from the product, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Yoti Tesco started using Yoti back in like 2017 or 18. And that's where I first came across it. I was amazed by the product. I was like, wow, you can do this. I think that inspired me to build my first like computer vision app.
No way.
I want to see what data sets they use to make this happen. But yeah, they see different values in the product, and you would have completely different objectives.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for example, at supermarkets, when users don't want to share any of their data, like I would like to keep as much of my data private as possible. And so when you're, say if you go to a supermarket or you want to prove your age, that you're over 18, the way that we currently do it is you show someone your ID and they can see your photo, your name, your date of birth, maybe where you were born, your address. And these are all things that I'm like, I just want to prove that I'm over the age of 18. I don't want to have to share all this information with you. And so Yoti now we have it so that you can just share like a credential to prove that you are over the age of 18, which is obviously really beneficial for the users because that's what they want, and they're just sharing the sole attribute that needs to be proved.
And you don't want to carry your ID all the time.
No.
Like, I just want to have my phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like...
yeah, it's so much easier.
I can buy vape.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, that's really beneficial, and just not having to share everything. Like, I don't want to share everything. So that's really interesting and something that we're seeing users want more of, and that's why they're choosing Yoti. But there's also, that kind of is surprisingly similar for some of the big businesses as well, because equally they're like, I don't want to have to store this data. Like, I don't want to be responsible as a data owner of my users' data. I want to know that this person is over the age of 18 to be able to buy this service or access this content, but I don't want to know anything else about them quite often. So it's surprising that they're kind of becoming more aligned, I think, as businesses become more aware of their responsibilities and want to protect their users as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. How do you do digital identity verification when it's a SaaS product?
So if we have,
say, OnlyFans or any.
Yeah. So it depends on what, I guess, risk tolerance that the business has. So you can pick and choose elements, but typically it would be if they want to do an identity verification. We also have age verification or age estimation, where we can estimate the age of someone based on their face, which if you're maybe accessing some online content, you don't want to have to show or share a document. So we have different options available. But with online identity verification, it will often be a document. So you would have to take a photo or hold up a document. There are a huge number of different documents by country, and there's hundreds and hundreds that we verify. But you can take a picture of that document. We'll then extract the data from that document. Also do a liveness or a selfie to check that there's a genuine human presence there, and match the face.
Ooh, you can feel my question.
Yeah.
With how do you know? How does your model know where to look? First off, when you upload that document, because of different types of documents.
Yeah, so it's massive. So there's thousands of even in the UK, for example, you've got the blue passports and the older maroon passports. So there's loads of different templates and different passport types available even within a country, let alone when you add in driving licenses or ID cards or, all these other identity documents. So we look at the templates issued. So there are standards that the majority of countries adhere to in terms of document templates. So we know what a document should look like. Mm-hmm. And so there's a huge range of techniques that we use to detect whether the document is fraudulent or if it's indicative of maybe signs that it's been tampered with. Mm-hmm. There's also, if you're performing an NFC check, so similar to contactless technology when you pay for something online, just tapping in, we use that same NFC technology to be able to read the chip in a passport. So if you're verifying your identity using a passport, you can place your phone on the document and we can then extract the data and make sure that document is genuine and has been issued by the issuing source. Okay. So there's loads of different kind of techniques.
But you need to have that foundation of data first of all the templates, and do you have like a team that looks into all of this?
So at Yoti, we have a massive team and looking at all of that.
The question about how do you identify that it's not a robot with how generative AI is getting so good these days. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen like my avatar, but she's beautiful. She's
so beautiful.
I cloned my voice and my face in the studio in like 30 seconds.
It's impressive. So with our liveness, you can do, there's different types, but we're constantly developing that. And there's kind of active liveness where you might have seen sometimes, it'll be like blink or say my name is M or that kind of stuff. Or there's passive liveness where it's still able to detect presentation attacks, which is basically where someone would insert a fake or a deep fake, for example, but we can detect that. And there are, things that you look at if it's a live capture. So you can't upload images, for example. So there's loads of different mechanisms that we have in place to be able to detect when someone is trying to spoof or fool the system. Yeah. But we have to constantly...
Yeah, because it's getting like better every week. I was testing this new tool called Hyett the other day because I wanted to see how my voice would sound like if I spoke Korean. Whoa. And immediately I just uploaded the video and it translated it with my mouth moving and everything.
I'm going to try that.
I was impressed.
It's ridiculous how much stuff there is going on, but it's, as fraudsters advance, so do we. I'm continually testing.
Back to product management, and I look, this digital identity is so interesting, and I'm just like, we want to talk about it, but we also want to talk about the point of this video, which is why should you become a product manager, and what's the impact of a product manager? How is that different from a project manager?
So I think a product manager, I find it super interesting because it's basically problem solving at its core. So and speaking to people as well. And so you're going out and looking at continually evolving markets, continually evolving legislation, which is interesting because you can help to influence that. Like a lot of what I do will be going and speaking to government, understanding the policy that's being developed, or advising on part of the ISO community to say, have you thought of this? Because it's going to impact tech companies this way. And so that's really exciting to be able to contribute and help shape the development of those kind of roles.
Do you have any product managers that you look up to or listen to their content or that inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, I guess it's more not necessarily product managers. It might be like CPOs or designers, or because I think a lot of it is just problem solving, which is applicable to a lot of different roles. So there's not one specific person, but I think generally just people going and doing their thing.
So how do I, as a software developer, wanted to commercialize a product, build a product that users want to use, are happy with? How do I think like a product manager?
I think the key thing is always circling back to making sure that you're solving the problem for the user or solving a problem for the business, whoever you're targeting the app or the product for. So when you're deciding what to build or what you should build next, making sure that the prioritization is based on the user need rather than what you think is cool to build. So for example, with Uber, if you take that, if you're looking at the MVP of Uber, the key thing was being able to link people wanting a ride with a driver who was available and for them to be able to pay. And that's kind of really all it was doing, which is still an advanced MVP, but that's kind of at its core what it was. And so I think making sure when they were developing the app, they were kind of making sure that it was always coming back to that problem. And so when they were having probably testing with users who were saying, oh, but I want to be able to split with my friend the taxi ride because then they have to pay me afterwards and it's just a faff. That's not really core to solving the problem. It's helpful and it's a great feature and I use it all the time now, but it's not kind of core to the MVP. So when they were deciding and prioritizing what next to build, they can leave that out, or being able to pay in cash, leave that out. We just want to do online transactions for the now. So constantly coming back and making sure you're solving the problem and it's a real problem and it's still a real problem compared to when you first built it, I think is really important. And that's one of the key, I guess, mindsets that people should be undertaking when they're building something themselves, or if they don't have a product manager available to keep coming back to that question. Is it providing value?
Because sometimes, this is for founders as well, you would get distracted by the designer's opinion, the developer's opinion, your friend who built something similar back in the day's opinion, an actual customer or potential customer. So you got to lose that focus throughout.
And people naturally want to build something cool and interesting and perfect, but often it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to solve the problem for the user. You know?
Well, Uber now offers train rides, so it's.
I saw that.
They built so many other features. I get my food there.
I know.
I get the train, the line bikes. Oh my god, it's like
line bikes. So good.
Do you feel like that's where all of the tech is going? That we're building these uni apps that do everything at once? Because I feel like apps are like that these days.
Yeah, there's definitely having that network effect is definitely something that we're seeing more of, I think. And it's something that we're looking at. We have a single ID capture and also a reusable ID in the app. So there's a lot going on. So it's making sure that we're really focused on delivering the most value to the user, for sure.
Yeah. That's amazing. And for startup founders, say I'm initially that software developer, 6 months later, the app is commercialized.
Yeah.
Ready to turn this into a business.
Ready to go.
What's the timeline looking? What tasks should I put aside to say, okay, I might need to hire a person just for this, and that person is a product manager versus another developer or designer or... Yeah, how do you know?
So I think partly your capacity, but I think when you're getting down to the detail of wanting to understand how the product is being used and the data that you're getting from the different events that you've probably built into the code, that's probably something that's more detailed that a product manager, or even once you start to get bigger, having your own BR, like a team to be able to do that reporting and understand the dashboards and communicate that to the business. So I think it's when the activities start to become that level of detail and that need for the specific focus on different elements of the product or multiple products, then that shouldn't be the founder doing that job.
I believe every industry should have the product managers, because every business now is a tech business. You should be digitalizing in one way or another. You should just be hiring product managers to tell 100%. You how to make your journey better. I'm so surprised that that's not happening in other industries. I think it might be, but
sometimes it's different names, but doing very, very similar things, I think. But yeah, I agree.
That's cool. Back to astrophysics.
Yes.
I was just like, but since you said that, I was like, why didn't you stay in that domain?
I know, I should have done. I mean, it was very male dominated, so I moved into tech. No, it was like... As if it's less male. No, so it was, I loved it, and it was super interesting. Like, it was a real mix of stuff. Like, I'd be learning about black holes and dark matter, but a lot of the research in that area, you're going to places where there's no light pollution. So it's some island in the middle of the Pacific, which sounds amazing, cool. Yeah. But also, there's no city, there's no town. You're doing research on your own, probably at night. And I'm quite a sociable person, so I think it was just, I was ready to move into a working role where I can actually speak to people. But I would have loved to move into that space, but yeah, some very clever people.
Did you see yesterday on the news there was the aurora lights?
Yeah.
People saw from Dorset, and I'm like, what?
I know, I've never seen them. I need to get down to Dorset. Why we're in London?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
What is your most embarrassing story as a product manager?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know. I'm trying to... Well, this isn't even related to a product manager, but it was the start of lockdown, and I'd go when we were allowed to go do a little walk in the morning, I'd go and I was listening to sometimes I'd listen to a podcast, and then for a little while I was listening to audiobooks, and for a while I was like, I'm going to listen to Harry Potter, because I hadn't read it. So I was listening to it, and then I came back and started working, and I was on my morning stand-up. And then I lent to go speak, and I lent on my phone. So the audiobook started playing again. So to about 30 people on my stand-up call, it was just like, Harry raised his wand. And I was like, so the rest of the day, everyone was like, oh, how you doing, Hermione? And I was like, this is the worst day of my life. No, it was not good.
Top personality traits to consider that you might want to hone if you want to be a good product manager.
Yeah, I think comms, I mean, it's relevant to most roles, but good communication, and I think being able to tailor it to different people. So you're going to be speaking to a lot of very technically, very tech-heavy people who are architects or tech leads. So being able to communicate with them, also then being able to speak to founders, CEOs and customers as well. I often get roped into commercial conversations to be able to help kind of understand the art of the possible. So when customers are coming to us saying, can you help with this? And
the sales team sold this to us.
Yeah, they were like, your sales team said you could do this. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, did they? No, that's cool. Right. Say no. That's where the saying no comes in. No, and then understanding what the problem is so that you can then solve it using what you've got, or in the way that is, helps them the most, that isn't going to take 2 years. So I think good communication, really important. Enthusiasm in being proactive and just watching the space and understanding what's going on with all the different components is really important as well. Mm-hmm. And problem solving as well. Yeah.
Do you think that you should also believe in the product that you were and the team that you're working with?
Yes.
Do you think that plays a role?
I mean, it always helps if you're working with good people who are smashing it. That makes life so much easier, and it just makes it more enjoyable, doesn't it? Yeah. But I think you've got to have a passion, or at least a belief in the products that you're working with, because if not, if you don't believe in them, how on earth are you going to sell them to people? So I think that's really important, and being able to know that what you're building is providing value and is important. So I think that's why I've really enjoyed historically working in government or with government, because you're helping people from Ukraine get to the UK faster, or it's solving real world problems that people are having. And so, yeah, that's makes it more worthwhile and easier for sure.
And what are some of the traits that founders should look at when they're hiring a product manager? We mentioned someone who's understand the data.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, so data literate, I think, is really important. being able to have, I mean, if they do have a good understanding of the space, for example, so with me in digital identity, being able to understand the legislation in different countries or what different frameworks are coming out, that's really important. Well, it's benefited me for sure. So I think someone who's got maybe that niche knowledge of an area is helpful if you've got it. And then I think it's just confidence and problem solving and being able to have those difficult conversations. I think if someone's got experience of when something's gone wrong, that kind of shows that they're able to deal with that and learn from it, and they've been in those tough situations. Whereas if someone's always just done really well, and then maybe they haven't had to deal with, when things have gone wrong or when they've failed. So although it's, amazing you've never failed, but I think if you're coming across someone who has, then that just shows that they've got that grit, I think, which is
you've learned quite a lot more.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Someone who's just succeeded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Let's dive into the tech stack. I think for a lot of people watching this, they're going to be like, okay, I coded this really cool platform. Or
show me.
And now what am I tracking? How do I start? What tools should I be using? How do I manage all of these things? Yeah. I think we spoke about Figma earlier, having it to map out the customer journey, but when it comes to the data, what should I be using? So
it depends on what your architecture looks like, but like Google Looker is important, like analytics as well. If you're trying to map a journey, those are great tools. There are a lot of different like data reporting tools and dashboards.
I use Full Story.
Yeah,
have you heard of it?
Yeah,
it's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
quite expensive.
Yeah. See what fits the budget. Yeah. But yeah, and then even in terms of like the build and managing the product, we use Confluence, Jura, those are great ones, industry standard. And then like Slack for comms and stuff, that's great. But again, there's a lot available.
How can we use AI?
Yeah. So again, it depends what you're building. So we use it for example, with algorithms. So when we want to train a model, for example, whether that's in like facial comparison or whether we're trying to estimate the age of someone through a facial image, then that's great to be able to learn from the data rapidly and just push data in and try and make sure that our data sets and what we're training the algorithm with and how the results of the algorithm when we're doing those testings will make sure that we're unbiased and making sure that we're tracking that so that as we change things, we're, ensuring that we're not degrading in terms of quality on anything.
Yeah. So maybe identifying what kind of feature or value you're focusing on to make better with AI.
Yeah. And it's not always, I think as well, it's important to know, you don't always need to develop that yourself. You could go and work with a partner or a supplier to be able to find that particular algorithm. So if that's something that you want to make use of, but you don't necessarily have the skills to be able to build that yourself. And also if you want to be, top of the game, so like you're not necessarily going to have the skills to develop this incredible algorithm that uses AI or neural networks, whatever. So if you want to get best in the game on that, then maybe buy that part of the tech from someone else and then use that and integrate it into your stack so that kind of you're using and mixing best bits of different suppliers as well. That's definitely an option.
And I wanted to relate this to a point earlier, but the closest industry to what you're doing right now is banking, right? Do you work with some banks?
Yeah, so we work very closely with Lloyds.
I use Revolut and Mondo, and they all have the same kind of identification onboarding.
Yeah, it's all very similar.
For some, it takes longer than others. Yeah. So do you work with some banks?
Yeah. So there's loads of partners, but Lloyds is one of the big ones that we work with. We've just launched a digital identity app with them, which is really exciting. And but there's loads. I guess digital identity is relevant to so many different industries. So there's obviously FS and like the KYC processes that you see there, but then even just like social media, they want to make sure that they're protecting their users or they're providing age-appropriate content to users. adult services online. Again, you don't want people to be accessing that it is not appropriate for, and also you don't want people on as part of the content on that site either if they're not, within the age restriction. So there's that. There's also applicability to like supermarkets, or if you're going to the cinema, anywhere you want to prove your age or show your identity or demonstrate your identity, whether that's buying something or with a right to work check in the UK, proving you're eligible to work, any of those
Airports.
Literally, it's everywhere. Yeah.
What excites you the most about AI in this field, coming into this field?
So there's two things. So firstly, giving the users more control of their data, I think is really cool, in seeing that, so that when, it's empowering to know that if I've want to share that I'm over 18, then I'm not sharing all of my information with someone. Like, I have the power, and that's going to definitely become more prevalent, I think. We're seeing in different states, so like in America and several countries in the EU as well, they're issuing mobile driving licenses, which is cool to see.
The UK is going to start issuing mobile visas as well.
Yeah.
So I'm an exceptional talent with Technation.
Love it.
And when I got my BRP, they were like, "Oh, it's only for 1 year. We're actually digitizing everything." So I was like, "How is that possible? How am I going to do that?" I'm originally like Moroccan, so back home is a completely different story because everything is still paper.
Nice.
So I don't know, how are they going to be able to transmit that tech throughout different countries, because we're all at different levels of
so that's definitely where the interoperability and the standards come in. So there's something called EIDAS 2, which is basically the standards across Europe for digital wallets, and so all EU states are going to have to start or have to provide a free wallet to their citizens. So there's a lot of activity in that space, and that's why you're starting to see more mobile driving licenses, and in America they've started issuing them already across several states. So that's exciting to see how that space is going to play out.
How we're literally not going to be able to live without our phones. This is already stuck to my hand 24/7. No, I don't even need a wallet anymore. That's great.
Yeah, digital wallet, the future.
It does offer a lot of value.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's as well the thing that's interesting, and I think will develop as well, is being able to provide then a digital identity for people that don't typically have access to some of the more traditional ID documents. So like a passport is a really expensive document to get, and you also have to have proof of address and all these other proof of ID elements to be able to then get a passport. And so there's a lot of, as we start to build digital identity, and kind of you can trust someone's identity based on, maybe they haven't been able to provide you with a passport to create that identity, but they've got a few other documents that are maybe a lower score in terms of how secure and trustworthy they are. But you can start to build up an identity profile, and then also use that to be able to help open new markets to people that might have typically been locked out of them or haven't been able to access them because they don't have a passport or an ID. And that's something, it's what I was looking at a little bit in Nairobi, is how you can build up trust for someone who doesn't have a bank card or an address. Do you know? How can you trust them to get a loan, for example? And a lot of banks you wouldn't. So, but if you can start to build trust in someone through a digital identity, then that's really positive, and there's loads of opportunities in that space, and it's going to be huge, I think.
Yeah, and that's going to impact how we immigrate or move, or as a nation do business with each other. I feel like how do you see that in the next, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of work in the borders space with visas, and like you're seeing in some of the airports in America, when you go and you can like almost just tap in basically, and it's similar with the e-gates and stuff, I guess, isn't it? But yeah, I think that's definitely something that is going to be a big focus at borders in future, like contactless borders where you can just walk on through. I'm sure that's going to be a thing in future. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
A book that you recommend to every founder or product manager starting out to read?
So there's a book called Continuous Discovery Habits, which is really good. And that's just, it kind of links back into that continuous iteration piece. But yeah, that's a really good one to make sure that you're continually testing your ideas and coming back to the problem that you're solving. So yeah, that's a good one.
And what's your
techniques.
favorite podcast?
Podcasts. I mean, I just listen to a lot of different ones. Like more it would be on kind of news stuff, not specific to product. I'll have a think. I'll come back to you on a product specific one.
Do you listen to other spaces, or are there any spaces that you're interested in? Like, I don't know, maybe growth marketing or software development or anything that you...
Yeah, well, like software development, because I did do a little bit of coding at uni, so that's definitely interesting. And I think even if you're not going to become a programmer, then I think even doing like a coding 101 kind of course is helpful, just so that you can understand the basics or understand, you know, how code works. Then that's definitely helpful, and there's tons of free courses available. So yeah, that's a good one.
Elon Musk is telling us these days that English is going to be the new language of programming.
Great.
You might want to not learn C++ now. Yeah. All right, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for
thank you for having me
today, Emily. It's been a pleasure. I will link Emily's LinkedIn in the bio. So if you want to ask her about anything that is product management, digital identity, or even astrophysics, she's your girl. Message her. Thank you so much, Emily, for all of this super valuable information. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions to wrap up our episode.